Cineboys to Cinema in episode 43.
43.
Hope you're well, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. This week, Alexander Payne's The Holdovers.
That's the film we went to see yesterday.
It's
very fresh in my mind still.
Yes, very fresh in my mind also. Equally fresh in my mind. Odd to watch it now, given that it is a Christmas film, essentially.
Big time. I mean, I wasn't expecting it to be... I mean, I knew it was set in the winter because of the trailer, but, like, my God, is it a festive movie?
Yeah, it's got a lot of... thematically maybe not so festive, but the sort of backdrop bleeds into the themes quite well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it was weird watching it, because in January, the last thing you want to think about is Christmas.
Yeah,
I think
completely.
we've touched on this before, but, like...
It just seems so far away, and it's just it's an odd thing to reconcile.
Yeah. It's like sort of remembering a dog you don't like that died.
Yeah.
I don't want to remember this dog.
But it's getting presented to me on screen in a film directed by Alexander Payne.
That cruel bastard.
Yeah, that's the title of the film.
Yeah. Yeah, weird. I guess, we lament this fairly regularly on Cineboys to Cinema, but the release scheduling, it's frustrating for situations like this, because I think that would have been a really nice movie to watch in the build-up to Christmas.
Oh, agreed. Yeah,
would have
100%.
Perhaps sort of injected some festive spirit.
Yeah. I think
that's all it needed.
It got a limited release so it could qualify for the Oscars mainly, but the strategy that I don't know who distributed it, but it was a bad move, I think, because I mean, luckily it's not really marketed as a Christmas film, but you feel like it's sort of semi-false advertising when you go in there and everyone starts. The first song is like a carol, a Christmas carol, and all right then.
yeah. As it's Alexander Payne, we'll talk about him, a very prominent figure, certainly in sort of dark comedy. Within the terrain of dark comedy, for the last sort of 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
Made some absolute corkers, which we'll discuss.
Completely, yeah.
A couple of duds as well. One of which being...
Downsizing.
I didn't even watch it. Again, I remember seeing the trailer come up quite a lot and thinking, that looks wank.
Yeah.
And I don't want to think that, because I fucking love Alexander Payne's work, by and large, but I don't know. That felt like a real departure from what he's done
big misstep
before.
Yeah, curious. I have seen it, and we'll chat about it in a bit. It's interesting.
Good.
Yeah.
I'll wait on tenterhooks through the nipples. Right, shall we?
Shall we? Yes, we shall.
Questing the cinematic void.
All right then. So Alexander Payne. I think a way to sort of characterise a lot of his movies is, or maybe the ongoing theme throughout a lot of his movies, is human imperfection.
Yeah. Completely.
The comedy comes in that within the imperfection.
Yeah, and people's reactions to it.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
And how almost in the ignoring of it as well. Like, there's a lot of sort of, at least at face value, characters ignoring the imperfections of themselves or indeed in others. But it becomes apparent as his films go on that there's this sort of growing sense that people are very aware of these problems and these demons, or these, certainly in the case of the Holdovers, the quiet anguish that sort of drives the imperfections. Creates them. When I think about the strengths of Alexander Payne, or the strengths in his work, that's something that really stands out for me.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's sort of exploration of a deeply flawed human being, and the ultimate revelation that they are still a human being, right? So they still have like love to give, they still have sort of passions, drives, desires, and they've been quashed, or you get the feeling that quite often they've been quashed by a sort of militant either regime or a rigid state of mind, I suppose.
Yeah, like that's sort of like societal expectation. Yeah, absolutely, I would agree with that. The only exceptions, I think, by and large, would be Thomas Hayden Church's character in Sideways.
Yeah.
He just seems like a fucking prick.
Yeah, completely. He's like a failed actor, isn't he?
Yeah. But he's, again, that's maybe part of his sort of trauma as an individual. But
yeah, absolutely.
And he's a fucking hilarious prick. Don't
He's
get me
so
wrong.
funny.
And it works in the context of that film. And yeah. But, I think maybe I've actually sort of just argued with myself and lost there.
No, you're right, though. It's largely,
the ramblings of a madman.
You got like About Schmidt, you got even Sideways with, is it Miles, I think it's called?
Yeah, Miles, yes.
Good
memory.
Yeah. I was looking him up earlier today.
Okay. Retract that. Cut that out, Ben.
Nebraska with, who plays it? Bruce Dern?
Yes.
Yeah. And then... arguably The Descendants, although that's a lot more sort of family centric, isn't it? In terms,
it's probably one of his more thematically softer films, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think that his films, they tend to be driven by quite dark themes, like depression.
Oh, yeah.
Trauma, and how that the sort of cyclical nature of it, a person with trauma tends to manifest more for themselves or others. Or just pain, perhaps more broadly, not necessarily just trauma.
Yeah, no,
Alexander Payne. Get it? Reference, convergence.
Yes.
There it is.
Over.
Yeah. That's it. Finished.
Oh, yeah, thanks very much for listening.
Yeah. I think there's something interesting in the way he presents it, in that it doesn't feel unrelentingly bleak.
No.
There's a sort of light tone that seems to permeate even in some of the darker elements of his films, that it doesn't feel like you're sort of free-falling into some sort of like thickened dark quagmire that sort of, completely absorbs you to the point it has a real sort of long-lasting emotional impact on you. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't mean, not to say that his films don't impact me emotionally, because after the Holdovers, I did feel this kind of like sort of slight melancholy that sort of followed me. But that's what it is. It's not like you're not submerged in it necessarily.
No, it's not sort of a kind of black and white German experimental film about depression, but it is still there, and he somehow manages to make his films very, very watchable and very easy to follow, very kind of quite straightforward, but the themes are running through that, and he's sort of normalising it a little bit in a way that I think sometimes like things like depression get sort of fetishised and presented in like a sort of dark, visual, cloudy way, which I like that stuff a lot. I think it's interesting.
It can be done effectively, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, but that Payne's not about that at all. I think
he's sort of weaving it into in a way that complements his stylings, whilst also being sort of present enough to feel like there's an element of sort of, I guess, like a rawness to it.
Yeah. I think sometimes that can present as
unsubtlety.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. Which I think he is. He's not particularly subtle.
No. I was thinking of that coming out of the Holdovers, and that's one of my main kind of criticisms. But is it a criticism? Because I don't think it would have worked the other way either. And I say that films are unsubtle quite a lot. I've talked about that quite a lot on like various episodes, and it's like a very common thing for me to jump to. I don't know why I kind of try and seek out subtlety in films when it isn't given to me. I sort of maybe feel a little bit confronted by that.
Yeah, I think there's something about the films that present a theme or an idea with subtlety. I think, just personally to me, that they do linger with you for longer, because I think there's a greater chance for you as the viewer to sort of imprint your own experience onto the movie and to the characters or the world, and I think that is what will stay with you for a long period of time. Yeah. But as sort of, I don't want to say sort of a more entertaining presentation, but it kind of is with Alexander Payne, because he's so good at just making these sort of very sort of, as you say, narratively streamlined experiences that just tick the boxes. They can be funny. Yeah. They kind of arouse a sort of sense of sadness or pity, or and sometimes where it's not always necessarily deserved, and I think that's a real strength of his as well. So I think it's not necessarily a criticism of him to say that he's unsubtle. No, but I think this film particularly was quite unsubtle. I think the character motivations were laid out very early doors, with the exception of the young lad. I think his reveal towards the end of the film was really well done, I thought, but we'll go.
Of course, We'll talk about it later, because that's interesting that you mentioned that, actually. If I were to be unkind towards Payne, not Payne as in the feeling, the director Alexander Payne, I would say that it does make his films slightly predictable at times. Like you can kind of. You watch the first 20 minutes and you're like, I think I know how this is going to end. Like, I think I know who's going to end up with who, or who's going to realise, oh, they're not such a bad guy, right? That's a big thing in a lot of his films. And again, it's harsh. It's a harsh way to start, but
I think it's a valid point.
It's important to point out in the context of the Holdovers as well.
But he's also good at laying down possible routes for characters and then snatching that away.
Oh, said yes.
So you can sort of offset that too, and I think he's quite. I think he understands that people have a certain set of expectations when they come into his movies, or indeed as an audience, you are conditioned by expectations towards a genre. Whether you know it or not, you're going to, if you've a fairly regular film watcher, you're going to be conditioned, even if you're aware of it or not, and that's going to instruct how you expect a film is going to go. And I think he is, whilst I agree there is an air of predictability about the certain character arcs, I think he is quite good at snatching the more sort of fanciful arcs, and almost like in a way that makes you feel more sorry for the characters because even they've started to believe those fanciful arcs. We keep saying like in the Holdovers, but there's that particular moment that we both noted when we were chatting.
That was a good moment.
Car drive home.
Shitty Fiat 500 I've got at the moment. That's another story for another time. Anyway,
I quite like the look of it, but I don't know anything about cars, so or have no responsibility to do with cars.
Sorry, that took a very sharp left turn very quickly. Back to Payne. Yeah, the director.
So let's talk about a couple of his movies. I haven't had a chance to rewatch them, but a few of them are sort of quite burnt into my mind anyway. Am I right in thinking that we probably think that Sideways is his best film?
Yes, it's my favourite Alexander Payne film about a teacher / failed writer played by Paul Giamatti. The second being Holdovers. Yes, it is my favourite. I've only seen it the once, but I have a lot of fond memories of watching it, and
it's just excellent.
It's great. Like the whole wine thing really works. It shouldn't. Like on paper, it sounds like a really boring film, and it's not. It's the loveliest, sweetest, most really hilarious. Quite again, doesn't shy away from the darkness, particularly in the case of like delving into Miles's mind and like what he's going through. I think Giamatti's a really fantastic actor for presenting an outward appearance, but also you can see in his eyes there's something else haunting him.
Agreed. Yeah,
well cast in Sideways, and then the unlikely duo of Thomas Hayden Church, who's like the exact opposite. It's the classic, sort of almost a British sitcom levels of like you've got one character and then the other who they're the exact opposite, but opposites attract, right? It's that formula. I love Sideways. I remember a lot of Giamatti crying in it as well, breaking down a lot. What about you?
Yeah, I adore it. I really, really love it. I think it's interesting you mentioned that sort of the nature of the sort of relationship between the two characters. I think that's really central to it, isn't it? And how Thomas Hayden Church Miles drags him along for the ride, just drags him into sort of like debauched sort of lifestyle and the sort of the lies that he has to maintain. And I love the way the lie gets revealed as well when they just sat out having a picnic and he goes, "No, I've got a wedding." So what wedding? And then it all just falls apart.
Yeah, that's right.
Good. Such a great reveal.
Oh, amazing.
Watch the film. I mean, I've just ruined quite a big plot point for you, but
that's all right. I think maybe
2004. That's long enough ago to sort of like spoil it without recourse.
Yeah. Have you? Sorry, go on.
No, go
on. Apparently, they've made a wine for it. It's a Pinot Noir as well.
Oh, is it?
Which is obviously Miles. If you've seen it, it's Miles's favourite wine, although he was simultaneously frustrated by it as well when he gets bad ones. Another sort of excellent kind of his relationship with wine is like it's the same thing that like people, I've said this before about Star Wars fans.
Oh, I was just thinking that. I was thinking about when you said that.
He's the biggest fan ever of wine, and he hates wine. I swear to God, he kind of sort of hates it. I guess it's his sort of burden to bear in the film.
Yeah, it's almost like the pursuit of something perfect, but he isn't quite aware of what perfection is.
Yeah. And there's a great bit at the end where he drinks it. He drinks his like prized bottle in like a diner, doesn't he? In a styrofoam cup.
Oh yeah. God, yeah.
That's a really sweet but tragic moment. I think that's like a low point before
things start to possibly peak up for him.
Yeah.
No, I think it's just a wonderful examination of that sort of human sort of, or particularly masculine in this case, impulsivity. Did I say that right?
Impulsivity. Yeah.
I wonder if it's like a pulsivity or like an extra IS in there that I'm omitting with my lack of eloquence. Is it eloquence? Fucking hell, the irony.
It's eloquence. It's eloquence, actually.
Eloquence.
Well done.
It's just you just feel so sort of bizarrely sympathetic for Paul Giamatti because he's just being dragged along. And it's a situation that, I don't know, I reckon a lot of people could really easily find themselves in.
Yeah.
Just being sort of like thrown into this situation by someone that's so confident. And if you're someone like him who is so devoid of confidence, having to hastily sort of construct this sort of facade.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really works about it is the sort of nature of which both characters respond to those situations and deal with it. And I think Thomas Hayden Church, I mean, Giamatti is undeniably, the sort of one of the most brilliant things about the film, but Hayden Church is so perfect in sort of supporting that, through being this sort of impulsive, reckless, single-minded, incredibly selfish individual. Yeah. He almost sort of allows Giamatti to like quietly sort of dominate. In a way that really works.
I mean, we've all been in that sort of situation, I feel, where there's someone who is either more confident than you or just more confident than you in a particular moment, and they're really jazzed about like a night out or something, and you're maybe slightly less so. You go along for the ride and they're just talking you up. And it's like it's quite oppressive, like an oppressive feeling, because there's an expectation of you to follow their lead. And it's really this film captures that really well. I agree. I think. And I've said it before, but Giamatti's performance in this is he's like a slight stammer. Am I right in thinking? He gets when he gets nervous, it's like a tick of his. And he does a really good job of not making that like a hokey kind of acting. It feels quite real, and it feels
part of his being. I think there's just something about him that just plays these kinds of characters so fucking well. It's just the way he looks, his mannerisms. I mean, I don't know how much crossover there is between him and this particular character. I hope there's, hope not too much. But hope you're right, Paul.
He's played some villains, I think.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Was he in Shoot 'Em Up?
Yes.
Like, doesn't he rub like a dead woman's breast?
Yeah.
I remember thinking that. I don't know. I've not thought about that film for about fucking since I saw it, because I was like, whatever. I'll just forget about it. I was probably like a teenager, and then as I sat down to watch the Holdovers, and the first scene of him in it, he's just sat at the desk marking his work. I just remember this really bizarre scene where he just strokes this dead woman's breast, plays with this dead nipple.
Oh my god!
And I remember thinking like, why? That was a fucking weird moment in a largely pretty shit film. 2, why am I thinking of it now? Like, of all the high points of his career as an actor, that's the thing I gravitate to. Bizarre.
I had the similar thing. I kept harking back to Lady in the Water, because have you seen Lady in the Water? It's like an M. Night Shyamalan. It's like one of his duds.
I haven't seen it. No,
I'm a bit of a defender of it. I don't know why. Because it's largely shit. But there's something about it which I find quite appealing. I don't really know what that is.
Completely buy it. I'm with you with Signs, right? Signs is largely seen as his dud, but I quite like Signs.
Yeah, man, I think Signs is great. I actually don't mind The Village either.
Again, I'm with you. Yeah.
But anyway,
there's something about the knowing it's sort of shit.
Yeah,
it's not the same as there's a sense of worth to it in the same kind of way when we talk about I fucking did this last week.
Southland Tales.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Southland Tales is a better example of that by a mile, but that sort of feeling of like almost like critically re-engaging with it in a different way, not to sound sort of like wanky or smart.
No, I agree with you. I think
I don't know. There's just something about him, like Shyamalan's films, that's even especially his duds, that are really good for that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and Giamatti, brings it to the table with Lady in the Water. I actually think he's quite good in it. He's got a stammer in Lady in the Water. He's definitely got a stammer in that. So maybe I'm wrong in the Sideways way, but there's definitely there's definitely like an awkward.
Like
I can't remember if it was Sideways or Lady in the Water. I'm sure everyone has this conundrum at one point.
There is some sort of like, I think there are elements of crossover in a lot of his movies.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a reflection of him as an actor. I just think the roles that he plays, he's so good at it. And he doesn't play them all the time. It's not like, Paul Giamatti plays another sort of depressed academic who has like a moral or spiritual reawakening as a result of something. That's not that's not something he plays often. And I quite like that. him and Alexander Payne. It's 2004 Sideways, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
there's been a long time between this and the Holdovers, and I like that. I like that there's space. Because it gives worth to each and merit to each performance in both films.
Yeah, agreed.
It could have so easily just been in like loads of his films, which again might not necessarily have been a problem because there are plenty of actors that do that with certain directors, and it works.
Yeah.
But I like the space between them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think his character is very different in Holdovers. Actually, in Sideways, he's like the depression in Sideways is sort of quite oppressive. But I don't mean that in a bad way. But it's like he's
more background in the Holdovers.
Yeah, he's letting it define him in Sideways.
Yes, yeah,
and not so much in Holdovers. But I need to watch some more Giamatti films. The only other one I can think of at the moment is The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Oh yeah,
when he plays the Rhino in a really bizarre role.
Oh god, yeah.
Yeah,
strange, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't. But
American Splendor.
Oh yeah. That's a really weird. That's an awkward poster, isn't it? Of him like looking annoyed.
Fucking good in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it was that and Sideways that sort of like how he announced himself to the world. As an actor, really. But yeah, no. Let's move on to a couple of his others.
Yep.
Nebraska.
Yeah.
Set in his hometown.
That's
I think
right.
He's from Omaha, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's from Omaha.
He's from. Yeah, I think he is. Do you know what though? He didn't write it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Someone else wrote it.
He co-writes a lot of his scripts, doesn't he?
Yeah. He also co-wrote Jurassic Park 3.
Did he?
Yeah. And I now pronounce you Chuck and Larry as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, he didn't write that one, but I think he was attached to it for a long time.
He didn't write Holdovers, actually.
No, he didn't. No,
but
I think he does. He's involved in the screenplay sort of process for a lot. But with Nebraska, I think it was a happy accident because he is from there, and you can tell as well.
Yeah, there's reverence, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
That sort of awkward sort of relationship you have with your hometown. I think we've talked about this before. I remember thinking about it in the context of Ladybug, because that captured that really well, that sort of like that youthful desire to escape.
Yeah.
And you get to like a certain age and think, oh.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that becomes like reverence and a desire to return. And,
absolutely, yeah.
There's a sort of complexity to that emotion because you sort of haven't quite lost the reason why you want to get away. But then you also feel an overwhelming sense of like yearning to return to it.
Yeah, and are kind of anxious and frustrated when things have changed a bit.
Yeah,
like when a restaurant closes down, you're like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
I liked it there. Yeah.
No, I saw Nebraska at uni actually.
Oh really?
Yeah. When we were at uni, and I loved it. It was great.
That must have been 2013, I think.
Yeah,
it was 2013.
Yes, you're right. Yeah,
when I saw Nebraska, I went through a slight. I did Payne's films, a lot of them at the same time, because Alfie showed me Election.
Oh yeah,
and then I kind of went on a bit of a binge. I haven't seen all of them actually, but I bought About Schmidt after borrowing Election. Then I watched The Descendants. Then I think I had Sideways already and had already watched it, so I didn't watch that one again. And then I watched Nebraska and fucking Downsizing.
Oh yes,
that was off. I think I saw that. Yeah, obviously that didn't come out for a long time afterwards, but it was sort of a week where I kind of saturated myself with
saturated by pain.
Yeah. That's what we should call this podcast, actually. This particular episode, Saturated by Pain.
Saturated by pain.
Yeah, I like Nebraska a lot.
Stylistically, I think it's his most interesting movie. I think the black and white, obviously, he's not done that since or before. As far as I can remember.
I don't think so.
And again, it's sort of all about. It's almost like it's similar to About Schmidt in the way that a character's almost sort of like revisiting parts of himself that that life's just gone by. Yeah. And the behaviours have just sort of drifted past, and there's not been a lot of time for sort of self-reflection. And maybe there is, or maybe there's that sort of part of him which a lot of Alexander Payne characters do, which they sort of like shelve it in a way that obviously they've put it away in the deepest recesses of their mind, but it's still there, and it's still prominent in their behaviour.
Boiling back to the surface.
Yeah, and so this boiling shelf. But I think both those films are quite good for that.
Yeah,
sort of reflecting on having like something happen in your life, which means it forces that reflection on you.
Yeah, it can start with sort of bitterness, and then the warmth comes from that, and the interactions that their character has with other people.
Yeah.
No, I liked that. I do need to see it again, and that's almost like my phrase actually of sort of the kind of podcast phrase. Like, need to watch it again. Need to watch Castaway again. Need to watch all of Payne's films again.
It's Nebraska is the one I sort of remember the least, which is weird because I do remember really enjoying it.
It's
the same year as Her. I've got a feeling
I
think I watched that and Her in the same cinema. It wasn't the Merlin, it was the one where we used to do film screenings from Union. What was that called?
The Phoenix. No, because the Phoenix was the Merlin one, wasn't it? Oh, what was that called? The Pixelate Film Festival was there.
Yes.
What was that fucking cinema called?
Oh, God.
Doesn't...
Please email in.
Yeah. Please do.
Or message us on Instagram. Yeah, it feels like I watched them one after the other, but I know that probably isn't the case. But when you reflect on things like that, it always seems a lot closer.
Yeah. Similarly-ish themed. Her, and I mean, just in terms of the tone.
I think I preferred Her, so maybe that sort of like jumped ahead of it. Maybe.
I saw Her recently. It's great. It
still holds up.
It's the loveliest thing. I really hope Joaquin Phoenix plays a role like that again at some point, because he seems to have ventured into that kind of Oscar-y, art housey, but not really territory. And I just like...
Yeah, I feel like Her was the beginning of that, though. Maybe, I feel like Her was the start of playing these sort of like pudgy, sort of like lonely men. I don't know, which he's mining that quite a lot at the moment with Beau is Afraid and Napoleon. Don't get me wrong, he's pretty good at it, but no, I think you're right. It'd be nice for him to return to something, but I know what you mean. He's in that sort of weird space now. Obviously, Joker Part 2 is coming out.
Folie à deux.
Yeah. I mean, we'll have to cover that because I've sort of laid into the first one enough on this podcast. So
yeah, and yeah, it'd be good to. I mean, it'd be quite interesting to watch.
I did that really annoying nasal thing. So it was like I'm so smug and self-satisfied because I had a go at a film.
Remember that when I had a go at that film?
Remember, guys? Aren't I clever?
I'm going to watch the sequel. We won't like it.
No, well, probably won't.
Imagine if it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I will be totally ready for that. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I will accept it if I like it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not that precious, but I'm just anticipating that I won't on the basis that the first one is so poor. And it annoys me how much reverence people have for it. But that's a conversation for another time.
Yeah. We've strailed wildly
off
topic again. Yeah. Anyway, yes. What other films? I want to talk about downsizing a little bit.
Go on, yeah, because I again, trailer looked fucking poo.
Yeah. It's a lot wrong with it. A lot wrong.
Does it feel like an Alexander Payne film?
No, it doesn't. It feels like a misguided Matt Damon vehicle,
right?
Directed by, I don't know, like Mark Forster or someone, like a director for hire who's not really. I mean, he's done Finding Neverland. That was quite good. But anyway, yeah. It's just like tonally, it wrestles with the themes that Payne likes to wrestle with. In the case of downsizing, it's a sort of the breakdown of a relationship at the beginning, but it's done amidst this kind of science fiction eco storyline about the fact that you're a lot more efficient when you're smaller. And like nanotechnology is sort of the way forward. So everyone's getting shrunk down. So there's all of a sudden enough food and enough resources to like the planet to last forever. But it's just an odd choice. Payne's an odd choice for the director's chair. And he's trying to sort of weave his trademark take on the world with a sort of
like pretty acerbic sort of.
Right on a napkin kind of idea.
Yeah.
And then it strays wildly off, kind of pieced, if you will, in the third act, and it just turns into like a film about Norway.
Right.
It's really bizarre. Tonally all over the place. There's like a white saviour narrative in it. Matt Damon makes some strange choices sometimes. Like, he's a good actor. But he did that Great Wall film that was like a Chinese-US co-production that performed terribly.
Was it Yimou Zhang that directed that?
I can't can't tell you.
I must.
But the internet can.
Zhang Yimou, directed The Great
Great
Wall.
Wall.
And he's like, he made House of Flying Daggers,
Okay.
Raise the Red Lantern. Like, this guy is pretty fucking great. Made some pretty excellent
Belters. Yeah, I mean, House of
films.
Flying Daggers is fantastic.
So to go from that to some bizarre, again, maybe like Alexander Payne. I mean, I'm just speculating about both of these guys here, but one for the studio,
Yeah.
one to sort of line the wallet.
It might have been that, yeah. But there's a lot of... Yeah, there's this whole sort of white saviour narrative in it, which is... Even in 2017, when there wasn't as much of debate about that kind of thing, although there was, like, to a certain extent, it was like an odd choice. And I remember thinking that was like quite an uncomfortable move.
Yeah.
And it's just a big mess. It's really unusual for him.
I remember thinking that again, I'm going on a trailer, which is something I shouldn't really do.
There's a stupid gag in it where he looks at his cock, and it's like, 'cause obviously he's shrunk down, and he looks and he goes, "Oh, thank God," that kind of thing. Yeah. Well, maybe it's not so shit.
I mean, it would have been more bold for the film if the cock stayed the same size.
Yeah.
So they shrunk, but their cock stayed the same size when they were like the height they are now.
Downsizing except cock, which remains normal size.
Yeah, just carrying it around in like a Hot Wheels car or something.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Would have been a better film.
Yeah.
So if you're listening, mate, recut.
It was
Spend millions on effects.
Yeah.
Fix it.
Just have everyone carting genitals and wheelbarrows.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's just a baffling little movie that didn't perform well. No one really liked it, and he didn't make a film again until The Holdovers. Although he's got into the habit of having quite extended breaks sometimes between films. Like, I think between Sideways and The Descendants, there was like quite a long gap.
Yeah, there was. Something that's like 2011.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
Fucking hell, I want to roll with these film dates. Usually, I'm fucking floundering.
Oh, no. 2011 confirmed. Hey Google, no. Yeah. So clearly, we're not recommending downsizing, but
No, I mean, I can't really because I've not seen it. But based on the trailer, I definitely wouldn't. And your opinion, which I hold in quite high regard.
Oh well, thank you very much.
So should you guys at home? Maybe not at home. Maybe you're
you're
around.
away.
Yeah,
On a bus.
pounding the streets.
Yeah, in Central Park, New York.
Yeah. Do you know what? We don't have many listeners that aren't English.
Oh, fair enough.
And even the English ones we do get from abroad are my friends that live abroad.
Live abroad, right? Yeah.
So like I get excited. I think, oh bloody hell, look at that,
Yeah.
Canada. And just Jack. Hi Jack, miss you, but I mean keep listening. But,
Yeah.
Maybe get some of your Canadian friends to listen.
Yeah.
Stop snowboarding. Stop being a loser.
Imagine if our listener base was primarily like in Stuttgart or something.
Yeah.
It's a really obscure German town.
Yeah.
Anyway, downsizing.
City, isn't it? Stuttgart.
Is it? Shit.
Sorry, mate.
Sorry
Just
to all of our loyal
That's embarrassing.
Stuttgart fans.
Yeah, that's embarrassing, mate.
Oh god! Don't watch it. It's not very good. Downsizing. It was marketed like one of those stupid kind of broad comedies with the main character gets a white background, looking confused.
Yeah. It had Talking Heads as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
It started to make me hate the song, which is annoying because I fucking love Talking Heads, but it's just annoying to have to fucking hear that. And again, as you say, the most cliche sort of tepid American comedy visuals over the top.
I can't believe I found myself in this situation.
Yeah.
However, will I get out of this? It was one of them, which is a shame and a pain, you might say.
Yeah.
No, it is an anomaly though, because everything else he's done is either excellent or, up there.
I think
not perfect.
I think there's been a couple of deviations from the sort of thematic territory we've previously discussed.
Yeah.
But the films that sort of stay on that trajectory of this sort of thematic trajectory tend to be solid. Like even Descendants. I mean, that film was not something I would consider great, but
No.
I mean, it's just quite watchable, quite enjoyable. Like a decent George Clooney performance, playing a character you've seen before, 100%.
Yeah, a lawyer, isn't it?
Yeah.
A family in Hawaii.
And his family is sort of falling apart or something, isn't it?
Yeah.
Again, been a while, but that's fine. Fine film.
Yeah, that was one of those Oscar films. I kind of mentioned this last time. It was one of those Oscar films that was really big around when the Oscars were happening, and then it just faded into nothingness. And I can understand why, because it's just like, once the hype for it's died down, it doesn't really have a long shelf life.
No.
Whereas, and I'd actually be quite interested to see what happens this year with the films at the Oscars, whether what kind of can hold its own after all that goes away, and what will sort of recede into the distance forever.
Yeah. There is always that sort of fallout with the Oscars where films do just slip away, don't they? There's almost like an oversaturation around, of interest around each film that's been nominated for, obviously the big hitters, the big awards. I think it'd be interesting to see what happens. I was surprised. I don't know. I always find the fucking Oscars lineup surprising anyway, because I just think, whatever. It doesn't mean there isn't good films in those lineups that may be deserving of awards, but I've made it quite clear before that I'm not really that arsed.
No, yeah, I'd never stay up for it or anything.
No,
which is surprising, because I imagine some people might be slightly confused by that.
Yeah,
based on like the fact. Yeah. But no, I don't think.
Yeah, I obviously I'd check, but I'm just not. It doesn't motivate me. It doesn't motivate me to watch the movie necessarily.
No, yeah.
But then I do get annoyed when certain directors don't get the sort of recognition they deserve, like Scorsese, for example, or Paul Thomas Anderson, who still hasn't won an Oscar.
Has he not? Yeah. I know Scorsese didn't win till The Departed, which is
again,
baffling.
Departed is a good movie, but it's like it does feel like a kind of Oscar. It's like, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Do you know what I mean? It's the same way, like, again, not to mention the Joker, but Joaquin Phoenix winning for the Joker is like a way of saying, yeah, you probably should have had something for the Master, really. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? It's like a sort of...
It's because the Master stood the test of time. Like, people still talk about that film.
Yeah, true.
And then, with the benefit of hindsight, people are like, oh, I didn't get as many Oscars as you might have thought. So,
yeah. Interesting.
Yes. No, but that's my 2 cents about... The Descendants. I don't really remember. I was about to say downsizing, but I've already discussed that.
That's in the rearview mirror now.
Yeah. I don't remember much about the plot or anything much. I remember George Clooney sitting on a beach looking miserable.
I remember him walking around doing that sort of like urgent walk thing that he does. He has he's nailed that sort of like semi-urgent walk between situations.
Yes,
and he's really good at it. In certain films, like No Brother Where Art Thou, he does it quite a lot, and it sort of works. But like here, it's like, you're just doing this weird little walk, like a sort of pigeon that can't quite fly, and it just sees like a woman scattering seeds or bread just out of reach. And it sort of panics. Its head starts moving, and it.
It's bizarre what you remember from. Particular movies.
That and Paul Giamatti stroking a woman's nipple,
breast,
a greying nipple. Should we go on to the film?
Yes.
Well, we talked about films, but the film in question, The Holdovers. Going into it, obviously you're aware of the sort of discussion around a movie, no matter how much you try to ignore it. And I was already sort of semi-aware that by and large it was considered a return to form for him. And almost like a hark back to the Alexander Payne of old, in terms of, again, working with Paul Giamatti. And that was very much in my mind. And I was kind of prepared for that to ruin the experience for me.
Right, yeah.
As we often talk about this in this context, in the sense the exterior buzz or noise around a film, be that positive or negative, can have a real impact on even sort of, seasoned film watchers like ourselves. But do you know what I mean? Like, it's really definitely fucking annoying, and no matter how much you try to avoid it, like even by the virtue of going to the cinema, like you're going to have like those sort of expectations raised, because they tend, sometimes they put like little snapshots or sort of like little tidbits from a review from like just to sort of heighten the marketing buzz. But I don't know, I just went in with that and I was worried. Because I do really like Alexander Payne. He's someone that when I'm always interested. I don't talk about him often, but when he comes up, it's always like, oh god, I love that guy.
Yeah.
So, did you feel that at all?
Because I mean, a couple of people have told me that it's great, and that's usually sometimes.
Did Alfie like it?
Yeah. Do you know what? When I was speaking to Alfie, he hadn't yet seen it.
Oh,
but he'd heard great things about it and was talking to me about those great things. So it was it infected me. No disrespect to you, Alfie. Though sometimes that can just happen. Like that's how the buzz surrounding a film gets passed on, right? It's you hear good things about it and you pass it on, and it's like a water cooler. It's free marketing. But yeah, I was apprehensive. Yeah. Particularly also because I think going in I wasn't sure I was in the right mood for a 2-hour 15-minute long film about a sort of stuffy professor bloke, and I knew that about that already. I don't know what. Yeah, so I was apprehensive. Is my long answer to your question?
No.
Also, I'd heard. I was getting slightly skeptical about the sort of post-processing surrounding, like literally the introduction of the grain, and like they use the old film logos and the old Universal. So they really I do find that quite sometimes it can be a bit of a crutch that a film hides behind.
100%. Yeah, 100% agree. That's sort of just a naff attempt to placate the sort of current cultural swath of nostalgia, like poorly earned nostalgia.
Yeah, just relying too heavily on retro aesthetic, I think. It's an easy
way of putting it. Yeah,
not that it's an easy thing to achieve. Like it's hard to make a film shot on a digital camera make it look like film, like it just is. But at the same time, that as soon as those logos came on, and then the opening and focus features and stuff, I was like,
that creates an expectation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Miramax logo came up.
Yeah, weird.
It's not something I've seen for a long old time.
Really long time.
Trying to squeeze that back in now, aren't they?
Yeah, I thought that does. I mean, I know they sold it, didn't they? The Weinstein sold it to someone else, and then they formed TWC, which is gone. But it's just the association is still there, clearly.
Yeah. I remember we looked at each other going, bloody hell. It's more like a surprise. What are you doing back?
But it's very odd.
I guess now it's in different hands. I don't know, but it's still strange.
I think on that, with those I was slightly concerned, but I largely enjoyed the Holdovers very much.
Just quickly on the technical aspect.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Because I was sort of semi-aware of it from your outro in last week's episode.
Yeah.
About that being something they wanted to do. It's obviously shot digitally, but in the pursuit of, I guess, sort of
the
cementing the viewer in the era.
Yeah,
they added that sort of grain from someone whose mind is far more technically astute than mine. Was that something that was noticeable to you, or do you think it worked?
I actually was surprised at how little they employed it. The grade, I thought it would be a lot more overt, and you'd see cigarette burns, and you'd see those kind of scratches you get, and it'll be like a film overlay download. I've got loads of them downloaded from YouTube, just old film stock 8mm. I thought it would be more like that.
Right.
Actually, they pulled back on it enough for me to for it to recede, and for it to be something that occasionally I'd observe a little crackle, but it was quite nice. And the grade is very 70s. It looks. I mean, fair play to the colour grading. It is really quite an achievement.
Yeah.
It looks really unique. Very brown. It reminds me of going to an old Victorian building and walking up the stairs and they creak. You know what I mean? There's that kind of varnished old English oak sort of stuff. Public schoolboy sort of. That's...
there's a sort of prestige to it, but there's a coldness as well.
Yeah. And it's sort of harking back to the days when boarding schools were really popular and there wasn't mixed schools, anything like that. It is very much, and it does that in the colour grade of a film, which is really impressive.
I agree.
I will say that right now. Well done.
I'm pleased to say that. Like you, that I wasn't, despite my initial reservations, I was I guess I was just like, after the first few minutes, I was just really prepared just to accept it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the sign of a good Alexander Payne movie, you know.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because he does have that habit. Like once you've sort of established the sort of rhythm, I was quite looking forward to it. Obviously, I always look forward to going to the cinema, but I was looking forward for an experience like that, just to settle into a rhythm and just be taken along with it.
Yeah,
I know that's kind of the point of watching any movie, but the sort of the pacing and tone and themes of his other films have taught me to sort of expect a certain feel.
Yeah,
that just sort of takes you, and I was really prepared for that.
Yeah, no, me too. I agree. I think like the way that the characters are established is like, as we were saying, like very kind of obvious, and it's like you get little moments with them at the beginning that sort of establish with, you know, the establishing moments are kind of flopped out in front of you, aren't they?
Yeah.
But I liked the what's his name? Paul, the kid, the boy in it.
I've already forgotten his name.
There's a boy in it.
The young man.
The young man
Paul, of the three.
Yeah.
The youngest person of the three sort of main characters.
So I thought, because I knew from the trailers that he was sort of, the idea that he was troubled, and I thought, okay, this is the moment where they established that he's either getting bullied or is a massive bully, and it was sort of a in between the two. He actually was mixing quite well with the other, the sort of his fellow students, which I thought was quite. You know, I wasn't prepared for that, and it was quite refreshing to see that as an establishment of, you know, his character. I thought that was quite good. So he holds his own, and he clearly isn't one to take any shit, but equally there's sort of, you could see that there was some vulnerability there as well. Yeah. So that was a really nice way to
and it's a vulnerability that's exposed when he tries to shovel shit on other people.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I really thought it was a really effective, like, it sets up the three characters. You know, it's these sort of three tales of sort of quiet anguish that become intertwined with one another through circumstance.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you've got Paul Giamatti's character, who, you know, spent the vast majority of the entirety of his professional life teaching in this one place. And whilst he sort of espouses to love it, which I think he kind of does, I think it is sort of genuine. He's
settled into it so much that he probably convinced himself he does love it.
There's this sense that, you know, the things that he hasn't done in his life, for example, like meeting someone, writing that book, or going travelling, those things have sort of passed him by, which is a classic. Again, we talked about his classic sort of Alexander Payne theme: life passing people by, and then needing this sort of moment of like emotional, I don't know, it sort of rejigs them, recalibrates them, this sort of spiritual reawakening. That sort of sets them on a path to self-improvement. Again, it's sort of old as time, that theme, but Payne is so good at it. Then you've got Mary Lamb, the character, played by I think it's Davine Joy Randolph. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And she is she works in the cafeteria of this sort of prestigious sort of boarding school. And her son has recently died in Vietnam, was drafted and was killed in Vietnam. And it's alluded that pretty overtly, and I think in one of the few times the overt nature really works is that the other kids weren't picked because they come from they're white, they're wealthy, they come from these wealthy families, which means they dodged the draft just by the very nature of the life they've been born into. Whereas Mary's son is black, not particularly well off, only really has that position because his mum's worked incredibly hard for it, and in the same institution.
That's right,
It's drafted. It's sort of alluded to that he's drafted for that reason and dies as a result.
There's a theme about affluence and wealth and its influence on your education. And it sort of runs through
class
that.
And race. Playing a significant role.
And that extends to the I'm gonna call him Paul. Is it Paul?
It is Paul.
And it extends to kind of Paul's own fear of getting drafted, because he sort of feels like, although he is clearly I think his mother's married into a wealthy family, the kind of rift that causes within the dynamic
military academy, isn't it?
That's exactly right. So there's that, which is a lot more complicated than just the class, your class directly influencing your ability to get drafted. It's like, how can you fall down the ladder, or how can you climb up it, and what is what implication does that have on your education and what you're going to do afterwards?
Yeah, and how people perceive you as well. I think there's that great line from Paul Giamatti's character. He says, "Life is like a ladder in a chicken coop.
Oh yeah,
short and shitty.
Yeah,
for most people,
yeah.
and you're lucky that you're born into wealth. You have to dodge a lot of this shit. I thought that was quite a powerful line after one of the sort of more entitled little shits who has to stay over Christmas, makes a sort of overt in his criticism of the presence of Mary's character, who is also there. And I thought that was a really, just a sort of quite telling moment in that, there's this sort of resentment.
Yeah.
And I think Paul Giamatti's character has this resentment towards wealth, not just in the children that he teaches every day, but in the sort of model of the college, he is under constant pressure by the, I guess, principal of the school to give higher grades than these kids deserve, because a lot of these people are the spawn of like trustees, and it's all
they're funding the gym, aren't they?
And like money has just found its way into this education system and reinforcing these sort of stereotypes about wealth and how it's sort of like buys favor and buys this idea of intelligence.
I
thought that was a really interesting sort of side theme. I think you're right that it was quite prominent at points, but it sort of fades away as the film goes on to become more about this sort of
it's the dynamic between the two, really.
Three, but then two, and then three again.
We should say.
No, you're right though, because the sort of Boston scene is where a lot of the emotional bonding between the sort of two characters really happens. But it is. I really liked that element. I also really liked just the way in which the sort of quiet anguish of these characters plays out. They've all got their respective sort of wounds, I guess. And on paper, some of these wounds are definitely worse than others, but I think Payne deserves credit for sort of giving them equal sort of time to show how they've contributed to the state of each individual. The way where they are, and how difficult it is to recover. From those things. I don't know. I thought it was really well done in that regard. If not overt, I mean, it's really overt. Like within, in the dialogue that's exchanged between the characters after the holdover period. So, for those who haven't seen the film and are happy for us to spoil it, the holdover is where it's a term I was never aware of, but it's
I think it's an American,
American
70s
thing, where kids that are staying at school don't, for whatever circumstance, don't go home for Christmas. They have to stay. And that means there has to be like a very sort of, I say skeleton, a pretty much minimal staff to sort of look after them for the Christmas period. And it pushes these three characters sort of in very close proximity with one another. And I guess in a way to sort of offset the criticism about the lack of subtlety, I guess when you're in that in each other's space, maybe the guard does drop and people are a lot more explicit in the sort of detailing the origin of their sort of personal trauma. All with the exception of Angus. It's Angus is his name. Is it Angus, the boy?
Oh, the rich prick.
No, Angus is the main boy, isn't it? Oh yeah, Angus Tully.
Oh, okay. No,
the prick is played by, I've got the phone. He's Teddy.
Right,
Brady Hepner does a brilliant job playing the most insufferable little shit.
There's something that happens at the end with him, which I want to talk about.
Which is good. A nice bit of comeuppance. But they're in close proximity with one another, and then I guess that allows Alexander Payne to sort of, the script to really, ladle on exactly what it is that's causing this sort of trauma. And again, the aforementioned loss of the son. In the case of Angus, his parents have left him, or his mum has left him for holdovers, even though he was supposed to be going on holiday to St. Kitts, I believe.
And then she was taken into Boston, which was quite significant as well. And she's sort of sacked him off in favour of spending time with this new wealthy husband of hers. And it's implied that his father has passed away. Paul Giamatti, again, there's that sort of sense that, that he's let life pass him by, and even though he might not necessarily be explicit in his regret, it definitely weighs on him, I think, in moments of introspection, that perhaps he could have been a bit more adventurous in all avenues of his life. And the way he's dealing with it is kind of interesting. Like he's a classic stick in the mud character, right? But he also drinks heavily, which I thought was, And he's a massive hypocrite as well. Like the way he teaches, and his sort of teaching style is a direct contradiction of his own lifestyle. Which is presented quite in a quite a funny way, which is clever because usually that makes characters horrible. But yeah, it was just quite funny in this.
I think it's central to the human nature of all three characters. There's what makes you human is contradiction, really. But I think you're right. Yeah, to point that out. I thought maybe thinking about it, maybe the lack of subtlety sort of works in that context, but there is no sort of expense spared in that department. It's very clear what the characters are feeling, why they're feeling it, with the exception of Angus, actually. So he keeps saying his dad's passed away. But then you realise his dad's he's obviously had some kind of mental illness.
Yes, it's implied that it's like schizophrenia. I know that's a very broad term for a lot of different specific things, but I think that was the general implication. They didn't really delve too deep into what was going on with his dad. It was more how it was affecting Paul. Is it Paul or Angus? I'm confused now. Why did I say Paul? I'm confused.
Paul is Paul Giamatti's character's name.
Yeah, I got it wrong. Angus and Paul. Paul is Paul Giamatti's character. Angus is... Can't remember the fucking actor's name. It doesn't matter. I'm sorry, everyone, but you know what we're getting at. The boy, the young lad. Yeah.
Dominic Sessa.
That's it. Name. Yeah, very good. Very, very. Considering it was introducing him, so he'd not been in a film before. He was pretty. His performance was really great.
Yeah, good.
Something kind of interesting happens with the way they handle the rich prick, in that he's met with basically just swathes of anger, and rightly so. Like, it's quite a cathartic moment, when he gets sort of thrown to the floor or chastised by Paul in the film. But then at the end, what I thought was really interesting, and it's sort of maybe more of a subtle sort of character development thing, is he's just met with indifference as opposed to anger. I quite like that. I quite like there's a bit where there's like a kind of slight confrontation at the end between Angus and this guy, and Angus is like, "No, man, I don't." He doesn't kind of rise to him at all.
No,
I thought that was quite good.
Yeah. What I quite liked about it was the sort of acerbic nature of the exchanges between all of them didn't really soften, even if their relationship grew and became something that was a lot sweeter. You can tell that the guards come down and the roles that they play in term time drop as they would.
Yes, in equal measure as well. Actually,
and
I liked how those all.
And I think the way in which they sort of build this temporary family together it's really well done, but not at the expense of the film's more sort of like, again, that sort of acerbic sharpness which Payne's all about, right?
Yeah. I think it was great to see those sort of boundaries get broken down. When it started, there was like loads of talks about Paul Giamatti's always mentioning detention all the time. And the way that is shifted to a more kind of natural family dynamic is quite good, and quite slow enough, not subtle, but slow enough for it to be a kind of breakdown, as opposed to like you say, like a big moment. Which changes everything, and that's not the case. I thought maybe that would happen with Boston, and it didn't. It was more of a slow kind of. The respect is earned gradually, and that was really nice to see.
I think it's the sort of realization they've got quite similar outlooks and views on the world. As a result of their hardships.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's a really sweet moment. I really like the moment when they're having a meal together, and it's after he's gone to see his dad, and he's obviously quite low. And again, in that sort of classic sort of style, he tells Paul everything about his dad and what happened. And Paul Giamatti's sort of saying, "Well, you're not your father's son; you're your own man." And I thought that was probably one of my favourite lines of dialogue from Paul Giamatti in terms of delivery, because it was
very sincere, wasn't it?
Very sweet, but there was still this sort of sense of the roles were sort of there. I think it's almost like he feels like he has to maintain this role as his sort of teacher, but you can tell it's like cracking under this desire just to sort of support someone that he's actually quite fond of.
Yeah.
I really liked that moment.
That was a great. Nice moment, yeah. And in classic Payne fashion, it's interrupted very, very suddenly.
Yeah, by something quite sort of like a sort of dull exchange.
It's a dessert or something.
Yeah, with a dessert, yeah.
But though that moment kind of punctuates. That is a great line. I remember that line really clearly as well. He goes like, "You're a pain in the arse, but you're not your father."
Yeah,
that was really nice.
Yeah, very nice. I didn't think it was as funny as his other films.
It had like 7 jokes in it.
I remember you saying this last night. Yeah,
and I will stand by that. And I do think that you can still define it as a comedy. It only needs to have about 7 jokes, but yeah, it isn't as funny. And some jokes for me were a bit, especially at the beginning, I was like, not buying that. Didn't land. Didn't find that funny. And you know when you hear laughs in the cinema, and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
It's just sort of
maybe it's me.
Yeah. But no, you're right. I think
there were funny moments for sure, but they weren't the moments that I think they were. It felt like the writer was hedging his bets on certain moments being funny, and it wasn't those that I found as funny. I don't know.
Yeah. There's also a couple of things that don't really go anywhere. Like there's another teacher, and there's a great moment with that teacher that we'll talk about in a second. But her niece, so Angus and her niece, like start copping off, and then that's it. Like nothing ever happens again. I don't know. Can you maybe?
Maybe it speaks to the sort of transient nature of teenage emotion.
Yeah,
you seem to have a lot of these sort of fleeting sort of.
Yeah.
Not that I ever did as a teenager. I just stayed inside, played Halo, and masturbated. But I mean, like, you know, apparently a lot of teenagers do that kind of stuff. Maybe.
Yeah, back in the 70s when there wasn't any Xboxes.
Exactly. Yeah. You can't sort of sleep in this sort of digital embrace of the Master Chief.
No, and Cortana.
No.
Anyway,
my surrogate mother.
Maybe, I mean...
God, even as a joke, that's lame.
Cortana's, wow. That's a reference that spans 20 years.
Yeah.
That moment for me, I remember thinking... Because it was a really sweet moment, doing sort of like a Jackson Pollock-esque kind of painting. Yeah. But that... Not that it needed to go anywhere. It might have bogged down the film a little bit too much if there was a kind of budding relationship.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but I think for the sake of
keeping it
brevity. I think it.
Maybe just leave it at that. Maybe. Yeah, you're right.
And I think it sort of was one of those things. It was also like the moment in the ice rink where you get the impression that Angus is never really been allowed to be a kid.
Yeah.
Because of his sort of like the trauma of having like a father with a deteriorating mental illness and a mother that's obviously got her own, obviously dealing with it and went off and married someone else, and I'm sure she has her own reasons for doing that. But the focus is on Angus and how that's impacted him, and you can tell that he really hasn't been able to be a child, and it's in those moments where he's sort of like laughing and playing almost with just the act of ice skating, just so much joy seems to bubble up from it. And I thought it was another really lovely moment, and shows how important those things are. And it really instructed the sort of warmer. It's when things started to get quite warm between Paul and Angus. Was after that moment. It was like and it's quite a sort of a vulnerable moment from Angus's perspective to show that side of himself. And I thought that worked really, really well as a nice sort of character moment.
Definitely. And also the scene, it was Christmas dinner, and the way that uncomfortable silence forces Paul to say, okay, let's go to Boston. That was really great. And like, I don't know why I found it great, because it shouldn't be, because it's so obvious, and it's like the line of the dialogue is just so obvious, but it really worked, and it kind of there was a great warmth to it, which I think is down to Payne and the performances. Yeah,
there's life in those kind of things, isn't there? I think it's sort of quite nice to realise that there's life in cliches sometimes and predictability if it's done sincerely enough. Another great scene would be Mary goes to her sister's.
Oh my
and she
God.
puts her deceased son's baby stuff in the same drawer as because her sister is expecting a child, and
Yeah.
I didn't see that coming. Like, I thought it was a hat box. I thought maybe some military hat that she takes everywhere.
Yeah.
Because there's this sort of indication of, that the characters are obviously, the sort of trauma of losing people in conflict is something that's very present, but it's without the sort of excessive nationalist element that's often tagged onto loss.
Yes, yeah.
Which I thought was really good. But I really liked that it was something so sweet. And so that was actually the moment where her, obviously, on a human level, you're going to feel that sort of anguish, fire empathy.
I think the Christmas Eve party was the other moment when it was sort of laid bare, but
more overt.
And less visual. And that hat box is real, like bombshell, horrible,
but
it was sweet,
really
moment.
And then the sister comes in, and they have they regress back to this sort of teenage state where they're sat on beds chatting and having a laugh.
Yeah.
That was a really nice moment.
Her husband kind of briefly look in, and he's like,
shakes his head. I'm not going in there.
Yeah.
That was bizarre, I thought. It was like a weird way to sort of introduce the scene, to have this sort of like husband that's not even in it, really, just shake his head and go, nope, and walk out. A bit odd, but whatever. Best performance in the film.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, well done. Oscar nom, maybe.
We should set up a new category for like someone that's just in a film for like 10 seconds throughout the entire film.
Best background, non-speaking, reactionary role kind of thing. Yeah. There's like 10. There's like 10 people per category.
Highly coveted, I'm sure.
Yeah. I thought it was really well paced.
Yes,
as well.
I agree.
There were no moments where I thought this is dragging.
Because you're hot on that, aren't you? Film runtime is something that I think I'm a little bit more lenient than you are with that. And I did wonder. I remember thinking, I wonder if that's going to grate you, because I know that you're quite hot on that. That's something that.
Yeah, no, I didn't know, but and actually, that's something I didn't mention in the Poor Things episode, but that did suffer from. Moments of
agreed.
Slower moments, but Holdovers really kept the pace going, despite the fact that it's effectively talking. Right, there's not a lot of action goes on in that, but the way that it's constructed is very kind of lean. Even though aforementioned 2 hours 14 minutes, but I didn't really. I remember when the ending was kind of the last shot of the car, and I remember thinking, if they cut to something else now, I won't be that gutted. I'm quite keen to spend more time with these people. A bit of a rarity.
Yeah, it's just, you talk about that lack of physicality in his films, because his films tend to have that big moment, like in Sideways, it's when they break into that guy's house and get the wallet back. Fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
And this is Angus sort of, again, demonstrating another side to that childlike thing of defiance. Dislocating his arm when he jumps on the thing.
That's it. Yeah,
that was a bit silly, I thought. I didn't really. It was just it seemed like a way in which the characters were going to have to be sort of forcibly put together in a situation which would make them more emotionally sort of available.
It was pretty slapstick.
I mean, again, it was kind of like. But I don't know,
didn't count as a joke for me.
No, and it felt like I don't know. It feels like you can really see the intention of the writer there to push things along, and it needed this sort of event.
Yeah,
and obviously Alexander Payne has one moment of physical comedy in his films, doesn't he? Or a prolonged moment that takes up the whole scene, as in the aforementioned scene in Sideways. But I thought that was a bit naff, but. That was the only thing that really, again, it's very minor niggle, but that was the only thing that really sort of lingered as a criticism for me, really.
Okay, yeah. I'm trying to think what else, if there's anything I thought maybe could have been improved. No, not really. No, once it got going, I was settled in for the ride, which is always lovely in the cinema, because it can go drastically the other way around sometimes, and you're there, and you're like, right, well. Can't even check my watch, it's too dark.
Where would it rank for you in his filmography? I was thinking about this on the way back from work today. I was thinking, I wonder where it sits.
Probably
I think it'd be third or fourth, I think.
Okay, yeah. I might even go so far as to say it's second for me.
Oh, wow.
Purely because it was a really nice theatrical experience, and any criticisms that I have are minor and can be forgiven, and actually any other way might have been worse.
Yes.
So yeah, it might be second after Sideways for me.
Oh wow.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay.
For now, I think it was just an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, fair enough.
Maybe enhanced by the cinema. I don't know if I had watched it at home, I might have been a little bit less patient with it. Not sure. Followed closely by, I liked About Schmidt quite a lot, actually. I thought that was really good.
That's the thing. I just don't know where it would sit with the other. Obviously, Sideways is definitely first, and maybe Election second. I don't know. I quite like Election, so
that's sort of Ferris Bueller kind of 20 years later.
Yeah,
kind of thing,
that's
right?
it. The sort of the nightmarish conclusion to Ferris Bueller's life. Just
sort of middle-aged, pudgy teacher. He likes teachers, doesn't he? Sort of,
it's a common theme.
Yeah,
those that can't do teach. This seems to be a very common theme in his films.
Yeah,
which I don't believe.
Absolutely not. No, I mean, a lot of my family are teachers, so maybe that's why I have a lot of reverence for Payne. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Nebraska maybe after that for me, after About Schmidt, or maybe Nebraska first.
Yeah.
Then The Descendants will be second to last for sure, and then obviously Downsizing last.
Well, yeah. I mean, Jurassic Park 3 as well. You did write it, so it's essentially part of
I saw the different league.
Payne verse.
Yeah.
I forgot that you write that. I think I knew that somewhere. It's something I'd read before and thought, what? And forgot about it until you mentioned it.
Yeah, he's got a credit in... he did some uncredited work on another film, which is really baffling.
Oh, really? I don't think Jurassic Park 3 is as bad as people say it is.
I like... There's a good bit in the middle where it's like the animals being... like Jurassic birds being put in cages.
Oh yeah.
And then there's a parachute in it. That was quite a good moment. Thank you, Alexander Payne, for that.
Yeah. Probably his idea.
Isn't William H. Macy in it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Tia Leone,
yeah. Yeah. My mate had it on video, and he didn't have the other two. So he put it on. And
that was the film the Jurassic Park film, the only one I went to see in the cinema. I think I was too young for Jurassic Park, obviously.
Oh, really?
Lost World, I think. No, maybe I saw Lost World in the cinema. I can't remember.
That was 97, Lost World.
Oh, maybe not then.
Oh, yeah, he did an uncredited writing work on Meet the Parents as well.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
I can sort of see that.
Yeah.
There's a sort of crossover there. Even if it is like a more overt sort of standard American comedy, you can see that.
I think so. Yeah.
And that sort of bizarre familial awkwardness, which he's very good at.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, enjoyed it.
Me too. Seek it out. That's all I'll say. I say that about a lot of films that we talk about.
Yeah.
Watch it.
Yeah. Outro.
Questing the cinematic void.
There we have it then.
There we have it then.
I didn't... I got to do it.
Yeah. Lucky boy.
Yes, finally, after 42 episodes of...
You really had to fight me for that. Because
yeah.
that's my thing, saying that. And,
yeah,
we did a sort of women in love style scrap.
Yeah.
But we didn't have a fire, so...
Yeah.
Did in front of a radiator.
Yeah. Radiator was turned off. So it was just cold metal.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thought so. Our sort of cold, sweaty backs going against it. I enjoyed that.
As did I. I enjoyed
film.
the film. Going to see it yesterday. It was a pleasure.
Even means busier than expected again, which is good.
I think it's great. Yeah, I mean it's the only multiplex in Bristol now, right? Apart from obviously View, but that's Cribs Causeway. So technically that's South Gloucestershire technically, just a postcode wise.
I do think. Again, I think we've talked about this a lot, but what I love about it is just like a relic to the sort of when the idea of a multiplex was exciting.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a whole new other conversation to be had about how that impacted like independent cinemas, but for our generation, that was the thing to do, wasn't it? So
yeah,
and it's I mean, the seats obviously different in the cinema, but the foyer I think has been deliberately kept in that way, in that spirit.
Oh yeah, and it's like it wouldn't surprise me if they shot like a bit of Stranger Things outside of it. You know what I mean? It has that sort of neon vibe about it. It's just great.
I love it. Love that place.
I just keep saying vibe. Anyway.
Enjoyable. Next week, something I have been looking forward to for a very, very, very long time.
Yeah.
Zone of Interest.
Yes.
Jonathan Glazer. A man that's responsible for one of my absolute favourite all-time films, one of my favourite films of the last... It was certainly one of the more recent favourite films, Under the Skin.
Yes.
And the initial sort of buzz around this film, a lot of people are calling it, again, giving it similar praise, if not more so.
Perfect.
So, again, it's a buzz you want to avoid, but go to the Watershed once or twice, and they've already started advertising it. And the trailer's great as well. It's like a really good trailer because it doesn't really give a lot away, but you get a sense. It's like a snapshot of the sort of feeling of the film.
Nice.
That lingered with me, into the starting of a completely different film
that
I was watching. Really excited. Huge Jonathan Glazer fan. Again, love Under the Skin. So can't wait.
Yeah, we'll probably talk about Under the Skin in a bit of detail as well.
Anytime. I think we have talked about it before, but fuck it, we'll do it again.
Yeah. I'm going to try and rewatch it. I'm going to watch the trailer for Zone of Interest. I'm going to watch the trailer for that, and then I'll try not to... I won't look anything up. I'll go into it blind. If the trailer is, muted in that respect, all the better for it, I think.
Yeah. The Under the Skin script is great. I read it periodically.
Do you?
Yeah,
man.
Yeah.
What in the portions of the film where there's clear kind of improv, the bits in the truck. What's that?
So
there is stage direction.
Yeah, there is dialogue in it.
Right.
In those scenes. Sorry, but I imagine there's a lot more freedom there because that was the sort of whole point of the experiment.
Yeah, I'm crazy how they shot that stuff.
Yeah.
With Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about it next week. Sorry,
Yeah.
But,
no. Again, I could feel the temptation from both of us to really dig into that. But in the meantime, thank you for listening. Thank you for your support as always. We'll see you in the next one.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.
Not see you, but
well, yeah.